we will conclude today with the final panel that will, I hope, sort of collect it all, the lessons that we've gathered today. So I'm happy to introduce you my panelists, because I will also have the honor to moderate this panel. So please, Dr. Ahmet, Faruk, Aysan, Avvocato Alberto Borri, Juan, Ignacio, Ibañez, and last but not least, Mariana de la Roche. Welcome on stage. Okay, everyone has their water, their mic. Oh, gentlemen. We all can do it alone, but even a framework cannot do it alone. That's because we have a whole world, and I think the digital ecosystem has had this experience of fragmentation, and now we are moving toward this synergy, and this is a very hot topic. Before we delve into it deeply, I would love everyone to introduce yourselves from the point of view of which framework are you considering yourself affiliated more to, and in which competence, what is your role in this development of the framework? Let's start with the right part. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is Ahmet Aysan. I am joining at the capacity of an academic right now, but I am formerly at the Turkish Central Bank. I am both academic and practitioner in the same way, because I do some consultancy also on CBDCs, and I'm one of the early figures on fintech and cryptocurrencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Alberto Borri. I'm from Switzerland, so I can say that I'm mainly under the Swiss framework. Of course, Switzerland is in the heart of Europe, so we work also on MiCA, but we have one today that is an expert on that topics, and we follow also our clients on the UAE, so we have the possibility to see the differences between the regulators and the way that the regulators are applying the new laws and are facing the challenge that we have ahead in the crypto sector.
Right. Well, easy for me. I'm Juan Ibañez, General Secretary of the MiCA Crypto Alliance. I was in a previous panel, so won't introduce myself much, but obviously I bring a MiCA perspective. And as far as I look into other jurisdictions, it's from the commonalities and difference and the comparison with MiCA, Switzerland being an important example, the UK and its development regime as well.
Okay, there you go. I guess for me it's also easy. I was just in the previous panel, so I won't introduce myself. And for which jurisdiction I subscribe, I just want to say maybe I'm a global citizen because I do quite a lot with MiCA, but also I provide a lot of feedback to the regulatory framework in Qatar. I've been doing quite a lot also with Switzerland when it comes to the comparison on DAOs. I look at what is going on with Brazil on the stablecoin. So I don't have the deep dive overview as maybe Juan has from some of the parts of MiCA, but I'm kind of a generalist, so I have a good perspective of what's going on at the global level. Therefore, what's so excited to come here.
I love it. Thank you so much. Well, if we delve into every jurisdiction that we mentioned and also compare it to others, we will spend another at least week talking. I just remember that the early crypto days, 10 years ago, it was all starting. In the beginning, it was only, I guess, SEC versus CFTC, who is taking which position and which token to work with. Now we have so much around. I would love you to highlight what has genuinely impressed you being settled, because there is a lot also on paper, but what is something that is really working in your opinion? And to economize time, can you also highlight a challenge that you have encountered the most dealing with with the jurisdiction you are working in. Maybe let's start with MiCA because it made headlines last year. So is it as good as they say?
I mean, as a regulation in itself, I think MiCA is pretty good. Of course, it's a heavy regulatory regime. And it might have come a bit early in the development of the market. One should also keep in mind that MiCA is not the only regime that a crypto project in the EU needs to deal with, right? A crypto project needs to deal with the PSD, the Electronic Money Directive, lots of other regulations that come at the same time. And part of the problem that Europe has is the concurrence of regulation and the overlap, right? And the cost that can generate. But from the perspective of MiCA itself, how it's been written, it's pretty positive. And that's why it's imitated so much. In terms of things that I would say are broadly settled, broad topics of asset classification are included. There's generally an understanding that there's assets that are commodities, utility tokens, and we don't need to pay that much attention to that category. We know now that there are stable coins, and every jurisdiction is looking at stable coins, particularly the ones that are fiat-backed, with similar requirements, right? The issuer should be authorized, there should be a redemption policy, and so on and so forth. And also crypto asset services, whether they're called virtual assets or digital asset services, whatever they're called, they're broadly generated in a similar way. You need a license, there's a supervisor, and so on. These things are settled. So things that are not so much settled and we see problems with are, one of them is, I mentioned asset classification as a settled thing, but there's also the fine print of asset classification, right? What happens if an asset is semi-decentralized? Do we have a financial instrument or not, right? That sort of frontier territory is not very well developed. An area where it's extremely challenging is everything that's cross-jurisdictional about crypto. So if you're launching a stablecoin in one country and you try to import it in another country, if you have a trading platform with an order book and a global entity and a local entity that you set up to comply with the regulations, can you have a global order book? Can you solicit customers from another country? Well, in principle, you cannot. But if you're a DeFi protocol developer, can you host an event and give out merchandising? Right? Is that reverse solicitation of customers? Everything that's cross-jurisdictional is still an area of work. So yeah, I would start there.
Thank you very much. And I think this is actual for any jurisdiction in the end, but it's great that we started with something pretty new, but at the same time pretty established already. Alberto, so what does the Swiss framework add to what MiCA is offering? And maybe also this singling out of a market inside the European ecosystem also is a bit similar to how Kazakhstan is in the middle of Eurasia, so there are maybe some lessons to get.
Yeah, sure. Now let's start from the first assumptions. Switzerland, it's the crypto framework in Switzerland is much older than MiCA. Okay, it's been one of the first countries in the world to regulate cryptos back already 10 years ago with the first FINMA 2017-18 with the first FINMA guidelines on token classification. Switzerland is in the heart of Europe, but it's not part of the European Union and the economic area. So we are not under MiCA, okay? I know that you are expert on that. Switzerland is very different from the approach that the European authorities and the European Parliament adopts with MiCA. So it's an open country. What one says is about the offering of services in the European Union. In Switzerland, we don't have this limitation, okay? And that's also why, for example, USDT is still available in Switzerland because we don't have any specific regulation that's oblige a company to be authorized in Switzerland to offer their services.
I'm not comfortable with the word steal. It is available.
It is available. Yeah, sorry. It is available, but in the crypto market, every 6 months we are used to have updates. But yes, it is available. So the principle of Swiss regulation is different. In Switzerland, the legislator does not want to over-regulate. So I think it's one of the countries in the world that try to respect as much as possible the principle of technological neutrality. And I make you a very easy example. If you are a crypto broker and you do on-ramp, off-ramp, in Switzerland, you need, as of today, because we don't know maybe in the next years, but you just need to follow AML regulation because they see that the main risk is anti-money laundering because you do, again, you act as a financial intermediary. And that's just the application of the traditional law that was applicable for financial institutions, also to crypto projects. Then in 2021, we had a new regulation that adjusted the traditional law to crypto assets framework and new technologies, adapting the whole framework. But it's a very advanced country. You can pay in crypto, you can do tax ruling with the tax authority in crypto, you can open foundation without big issues and managing that in cryptos. So I can say that these are the main differences that we have in Switzerland. So we don't have the, how many pages we have now with the regulatory technical standard? More than 2,000? I don't know exactly. In Switzerland, that's not. It's also maybe just a point of languages. In Switzerland, we have many official languages, and I believe that, you know, if we need to translate all the regulation like in Europe in all the languages, it's going to be something more complex. But
no, it's not printed, so in the end, exactly. Pages are not that relevant as
but
bytes.
I need to,
but then you need to apply that pages, so...
I need to answer to this. Because Europe, like European countries, it's not that they didn't have, like all of them not had regulations, right? Like Germany had a regulation before MiCA, right? So what is the advantage of like having like one regulatory regime for all the European countries is that idea that once you get your license in one European country, you get to serve all of them, right? With the passporting. So this was an amazing idea. If you thinking like actually what the regulation wanted to do, which in paper is fantastic, right? Because I won't need a license in France, I don't need a license in Germany. I just go to my favorite regulator with a language I can speak, or that they speak English, and I just passport everywhere, right? So this was an advantage thing. If you go to Switzerland, you just get to Switzerland. I don't know how much is the crypto.
Well, if you are in one canton, you can open a business in another canton.
Yeah, well, but like it's like you think in adoption, right? And I think that this is what is really important. And I also want to echo like something that you just said. We don't know if in 3 years it's going to be like that. That's not what I want to hear as an industry player. I want certainty, not just clarity at the moment. I want certainty that what I'm going to do is going to be legal in 3 years. Because I'm going to put a lot of money and effort to get adoption. So if it's not going to be legal in 3 years, or I don't know, like I will just go to another jurisdiction, maybe with a more complex regulatory framework that I know is going to be stable. So I never have the flag of defender MiCA normally, but I thought that it was important to,
I agree,
to put it on context.
That's the essence of the European Union, you know, the passporting. So that's the essence.
But MiCA is not only European Union, it's 27 plus 3.
Yeah, because we have
We
also the
also have
European
Norway.
Economic Area. And also Liechtenstein.
Yeah, Liechtenstein has done an amazing job with digital assets.
Okay, advocate against devil's advocate. You'll decide who is who. I'll be back for you because I have a question for you that will be Ahmet. Talking about the Gulf, there are also different frameworks. I'm actually not sure even which is older. Then we'll talk about this and if it's a good thing actually to be older or not in our industry. How is it different? What does it look from inside with all the Islamic finance? Ecosystem and also the different verticals basically. What I remember experiencing in the Gulf countries is that all the institutions, and I actually saw it here today in Kazakhstan, there are different institutions that are working closely together. We didn't have police here today, but I don't know whether there is, but in the Gulf countries it's actually very important because police representing the crime sides, and so they are those who maybe sometimes know more about the security in digital assets than the regulators or the institutions yet. So how does it look from inside, and what is different, and what is the biggest challenge as you can see? Thank you.
Thank you, Kristina. First of all, let me thank the organizer because This is probably one of the very rare events that the regulators are very much involved in the preparation, and you don't see this in the Gulf for sure, and in many other places, even in overall in Central Asia. And I consider this as part of future readiness, you know, because many of the things that we discuss today is not necessarily in practice, and it is kind of an evolving field. It is not necessarily settled. It is quite different from the regular kind of regulations in the financial markets. In the regular form of financial regulations, something is done in BIS, and then we just adopt them, and then that is easy. But the life is not like that. Many things are in making, and we are trying to adjust. And one option might be just to ignore them, especially for oil-rich countries. That's where the Gulf is important, I believe, and that's where we somewhat see differences among the Gulf countries. Even though the Gulf appears to be kind of a single unity, it is not. Saudi Arabia is quite different from UAE. UAE is quite different. Even within UAE, how the Dubai acts and how the Abu Dhabi acts are quite different. And it is kind of a richness also, especially when it comes to digital assets, regulations, and so on. But I believe that what we are doing here is very important because it's part of this conscious futures idea where things will evolve, and then we have to evolve with the markets, evolve with the global politics. Today, for example, we didn't discuss much about the global politics, but whatever we discuss here, especially when it comes to compliance and so on, is quite global. And it's quite, as we start naming as geoeconomics, what sort of things will come out in front of us is going to be part of the global politics. But let's go back to the Gulf region. For the Gulf region, the countries are completely different from each other. And especially considering that this field is an evolving field, the countries are evaluating the cost and benefits. For example, Qatar is much more risk averse, and they are right because they have anyway enough reserves, gas reserves and so on, and then they don't want to get into something which may turn against them later on in the financial compliance and so on in international sphere, which we observe it for other countries who are put to sanctions or who are put to some grey list and so on. So the Qatar doesn't want to do this. For UAE, it is different story. And UAE is not, Abu Dhabi is more acting kind of a state, which kind of a process state sometimes, and representing somewhat, I believe, the bigger countries. For example, in their dealings with the CBDCs with China. I mean, you will not normally expect this from a small country, but they are the best to offer CBDC because it's kind of a stable coin where it's fixed dollar, and then you can do all sorts of trade. So they see the benefit there, I believe, so they are much more risk taker. But on the more private side, Dubai is leading, and they are also much more risk takers. For Oman, for Saudi Arabia, for example, it's also a huge market because there's a big internal market. The population is about 40 million. And whatever you implement, it is anyway going to be benefiting from the huge market. And that's why I believe there are good, we have to have a mixture of this for Kazakhstan. For example, Kazakhstan is an oil-rich country, but still it's not, the only source of income is not the oil. So we need to develop the domestic financial system because there is a likelihood of benefiting more from this sector. And the country is not small, it's a big country with 20 million population, much bigger than the UAE, Qatar, Oman sort of countries. So for the Gulf region, in short, there are different types of strategies. And this is very much related with the global politics, by the way. I am sure, for example, after all these things are happening, probably the Gulf countries are going to be much more risk takers because there was an assumption that we will not take any risk and we will be protected in the international sphere. But now this is somewhat being jeopardized. That's why I said this is more of a part of conscious futures, where things are gonna evolve at the very macro level, at the global financial system level, and it will boil down to the institutions, like the financial institutions. It will boil down to the individual economies.
Very balanced position. Thank you. Diplomatic. And yes, please.
I'm a former central bank.
I like the focus on risk aversion and risk taking, so I wanted to go on that. I mean, MiCA is very long, and all of these regulatory technical standards, yeah, thousands of pages. Many of them, though, are on stablecoins, and that's, yeah, exactly, and other forms of stablecoins, and those are categories where MiCA was born in a very risk-averse way. So the process of writing MiCA was ongoing by technical teams within the, say, the European Commission, and then Facebook's Libra was launched. Which led to a state of panic, right? Privately issued money taking over our continent. We need to regulate this. So you have this sort of more reasonable, more balanced, let's say, not more reasonable regulation. And then you have a regulation for stablecoins specifically that is very prudential and it's risk averse. But that brings me to Switzerland, though, because Switzerland has, yes, a much more do no harm approach that I have been very interested by. But also it's interesting that the way you say we have had a regulation since before MiCA, then you say we have had FINMA guidance, right? That's not what regulation means for us. It's regulation, of course, but we use regulation with a capital R, right? And now FINMA is, well, there's a consultation, right? I'm not sure what's the latest on that, but it's really thinking of changing the stablecoin regulation part specifically and adopt something that is MiCA-like, which brings me to what you were saying before. It's interesting that you say that Gulf countries are going to be potentially more risk-taking in the future. I struggle to see that in the stablecoin front specifically. It's possible, but I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm saying it's, we will see sort of situation for global stablecoins and how we regulate them locally. I don't think that's like settled, and that's the main unsettled area.
Oh, but I now need to jump in because you opened the door. I don't think that the focus is always on stablecoins. On that, I think that you're 100% right. But the Qatari framework is really interesting because the central bank is the one that has the blocker on offers to retail, if I remember correctly. But the QFC is looking into tokenized securities and tokenized instruments for capital markets. And on that, I think that they're really advanced because they have experimented with that like longer than what we have been doing in other markets, because we are so focused on stablecoin that we just started to talk about how we are going to create like secondary markets for tokenization. And this happened already with the pilot regime that came before MiCA. And the issue there also is about the secondary market. Like, we do not have secondary market for tokenized securities, and this is something that I would like to bring, because I was thinking on like the comment that you just mentioned on Saudi Arabia. That's completely true, because industry is not only looking where is clarity, but also where there is a market for this, right? So I can have perfect regulation. I can have like certainty that the regulation is not going to change in the next 3 years, but there is no appetite and there's no market. I will not enter that market because that will be a waste of money. If I know that there is going to be like, how many people in Saudi Arabia?
More than 40 million.
Imagine, if I enter there and I know that all of them want to access my product, like I will go regardless of what the jurisdiction has on the regulatory framework. If it's expensive to comply, I will make the sacrifice in order to be able to tackle that market.
So you covered actually part of what I wanted to ask you. So what is the price that you are eager to pay? And what is, on the other side, what is the red line when you really want to enter the market, but what, maybe you have some examples without naming them, that didn't work, and so you had to get a kind of step away a bit, maybe wait?
I don't think that there's a magic recipe, so I wouldn't like to put examples because I will need so much time to just create the proper context for that to explain that it will be incomplete and then you will have the wrong idea in mind, right? I think that one of the mistakes is to try to copy and paste a regulatory framework from one jurisdiction to another, because you need to also like understand what is the context in that particular jurisdiction and what is the risk appetite. Like, it's not the same to go and talk to an investor in the US that probably they will give you the money if you do a good pitch. That actually convince an investor in Europe, where we are going to actually look more at the detail, because like the risk appetite is completely different. Same when you go to the Savannah region, right? Like it's like also like you have the Islamic laws for assets. So the Sharia is like, yeah, thank you. You will not have the same kind of like movement when you go with like a new token that you want to launch, right? Like Trump token or whatever you want to do. Like that won't land there. So all of these different things will like need to play a role in the considerations that different entities should consider when going into certain markets. And at the end of the day, is what I mean, like, is also the appetite, right? And this is really important. It's not what is in the regulation. Is like, if there is no appetite on the market, it doesn't matter if the regulatory framework is clear, cheap, easy, whatever. Why are you going to go there? There's no market for you, right? So, and that it will also depend on the type of services that you are offering, because it's not just exchanges. You also have like custody providers, you also have like brokerage, you also have people just using certificates as part of like a bigger solution that they are developing for smart mobilities or energy. Here, the part of energy transition is really interesting, but that's more like looking at the technology level, and then you have like some implications at the level of the digital assets.
Well, in an ideal world, we have different facets of the ecosystem that are developing sort of in parallel and have a dialogue, etc. And then regulators are like observing from inside, but also from outside, maybe without being like that active, because they are giving support. They are not like are on the front line, now I will punish or now I will support. They are not gods. They are actually here to support the industry that is in its...
But if I may, because I think there's actually a better way that the regulator can look at it, and it's what they did in the... I'm not a US fan whatsoever right now, but what they did with Genius was really, really good, because they have an equivalence principle, which means if another jurisdiction has a similar framework, the entry to my jurisdiction is going to be much easier. And that's talking about, like, I think it was you, the one that flagged that. It's just like, this is like a more... Or was you? I don't remember. It was just like a global, it's a global issue, right? So we cannot like keep talking about like digital assets and digital assets adoption in silos. So we have right now, Brazil was looking at what was happening with MiCA and what happened with the US and said, US has an equivalence principle. I'm just gonna do something similar. So in the moment that I go to market with like reals, stable coins, I can just like go also to the US market, right? So that is the way in which I see more like the global regulation going, with like recognizing the other regulation rather than harmonization, because that won't
How
happen.
much time did they take in the US to come to this? Like in the end, in my opinion, they also sort of reversed their own path that they took. So, but we are all learning, right?
But it is part of the process, right? Because everything is in making, and it is good for the regulators. Even the same regulators may change their attitude over time. And there are different types of regulation. First, for example, if you are just getting into the crypto world, it is probably better to be in the Wild West and then allow the people.
Or Wild East.
Wild East, it
depends on the
matter,
perspective.
but at the end, it is the initially you want to take the market share from the global markets, especially when it comes to the crypto. But later on, when international financial markets politics change, probably you can be more defensive, more conservative, which is happening. Like in Turkey, for example, like in the last 2-3 years, there is much more regulation. But in the meantime, there are lots of exchanges developed, which is a good strategy for Turkey type of country, which is a more capital scarce country. But it is not the case for Qatar, for example, because Qatar is already capital, so they don't need to experiment. The benefit of experimenting is anyway gonna be less than the cost probably. So there are different risk weighting. But for Turkey, there is much more benefit of experimenting, even though there are some mistakes and so on, and they seem to be fixing them in the last 2 years. So the regulators are not static at all. And these regulators are anyway, they attend IMF World Bank meetings, they attend many international foreign relations related events, and then they know the global politics, and they are even ordered to do so. So that's why I believe regulators are to follow, but at the same time, it depends on the characteristics of the country. And then over time, and even the international politics. I mean, how come now we can just rely on US for global financial market regulation, as we used to do it for BIS? Now even the Trump doesn't want to be involved in this international fight. So I believe for many countries, the main focus will be more on future readiness, where when things get cleared out, because we don't know how it's going to be evolving. It is going to be more regulation, more kind of global politics, or it is going to be less. So when the things are cleared out, it is better to be ready. So this is what many countries are playing. And actually, Mariana, you rightly mentioned, for example, there is not much benefit for Qatar to involve in stable coins. And it is very dangerous, so it's very political. Imagine you have a stable coin by a sovereign, or you have a CBDC, which is kind of a stable coin, which is maintained by a sovereign. So it's a big challenge to US hegemony, US financial hegemony. So they will be less reliant on the stable coin, but very interestingly, UAE has not done so. UAE was very active in stable coin. This is very interesting. But at the same time, in Qatar, they are very active in tokenization. We recently organized a CEO roundtable. The industry partners came to our university. The regulator, the CEO of the Qatar Finance Center was there. So they are quite active, and there are certain domestic needs as well, but they know that they have to be ready when the things are more cleared after a while.
Fascinating industry. We should make a Netflix series about regulation, no? Or like one day of a life of a regulator, like the pit, you know? No? Yeah, it's pretty dramatic, right? We have learned, I think we, all five here, learned a lot about the Kazakhstan framework. So I would love everyone on the panel to sort of processing it, offer one insight from your experience, from your native framework that maybe could be relevant or interesting for Kazakhstani, and also something that maybe you would like to take from what you've heard here. Because I asked before whether the older is the better or not. I think it's both. It's actually exchangeable, because sometimes new generations are offering something that the oldest just didn't have. And obviously, it won't be a grandmother who will educate her grandson to use TikTok. It will be the other way around. So maybe, and I'm pretty sure that we've heard something that we can learn from, actually, for the international framework. Okay, let's start with that.
For me, actually, today it was very interesting for me, because I see many regulators in this stage, from central bank, from Astana financial, other regulators, and there's a dual structure here apparently. I mean, I tried to search also before this event. It's very similar to Gulf region overall, but what I see here, that the regulators are coming together, they are discussing. Even the very existence of this event is actually a good proof that I believe Kazakhstan is on the right path. And Kazakhstan is not completely like oil-dependent country, so still the country is huge and there are other resources. So there is even more benefit from coordination, and I really see this. We may not necessarily see this all the time in the Gulf region, because when you have separate regulators, there are territorial issues, and then you have to target for something like bigger, like a global markets and so on. But this is very good. And also, regulators have to be even much more proactive, because by nature regulators are not always active. They are generally, they set the rules and they watch, even as we discussed today. Either you put the principles and then you follow, or you let the market to function and then you clear the market later. This is another form of regulation. Both are doable. It's not like one is better than the other, depending on the country characteristics. Like in Turkey, for example, they let the crypto exchanges to function, even the payment system companies to function. but now they are putting them into jail, which is fine. That's doable. This is
It's
also
not.
that's also a form of regulation. But the sequencing is also a matter that. And how are you going to start? You are starting on something which you don't know. One option might be very conservative. You set the rules first, and then you try to act, which may be too late, right? For some countries, it's too late anyway. The other option might be you just let the market to function, and then you try to fix the problems. I believe both are possible, and as far as I understand, the Kazakhstan is in between, and it's a good reputation because these markets are not anymore new, as even we see peer-to-peer conference is the 12th one, right? This is the 12th one. So even at some point, I believe this will be a good history. We should look at what has been discussed in the past in these conferences. It's a good signifier, and this year we are mostly discussing about the regulation and compliance. It shows that the market is maturing. So one lesson that I would like to say to the regulators, the practitioners in Kazakhstan, it is good that you are active. You are following what's going on globally, and then you are trying to take your part there. You are trying to define your own role instead of BIS defining your role in the financial system. And this is a big thing for a country.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Alberto.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe that the regulation that we have achieved nowadays in the crypto sector could be even compare a little bit more than the traditional financial instruments that we know, okay? Like the ESMA guidelines that we have, all the complexity in the qualification of a token as a securities, transferable securities or not, the reverse solicitation approach of ESMA, for example. I mean, things are not easy, okay, nowadays at the worldwide level. And also if you think also the CARF, the Crypto Asset Reporting Framework, that has been added on top to all the regulatory duties that the company needs to follow, I mean, you need to do the right assessment before choose the jurisdiction and everything. And forum shopping is real. I don't, every jurisdiction has some pro and cons, but the reality, and that's what I do with my client, is to understand what's the best for what you do. So your users, where you want to offer your services, what's your services, and so on. Because yes, we can compare jurisdiction, but then you need to go for every use cases to see what's the best and what's the best fit for what you do. Then my suggestion to regulators, even here in Astana, very happy to be here, never been in Kazakhstan before, is to be open to discuss with the markets. This is what I see as a big advantages. I also work under MiCA and work with some national competent authority, and some of them, they're not open to discuss. When you speak with them, it's like that they don't want you, of course, because I work with Italy, unfortunately, and they're not open to this business. But good things are to be open to discuss with the market participants, because the stakeholders, and also, as I said before, they invest money, they open the company, they need to move people, they need to invest in that jurisdiction, and they want to be comfortable to be able to have meetings with the authority, discuss the business plan, not being under a police due diligence, okay? So that's what I believe is very important. Then the other advice is to provide a 360 degrees regulatory package, including taxation and experience from the authority. If you think of big corporate structures, it's not just the regulation. You need to move people, you need to move dividends, you need to have a taxation framework, you need to move crypto assets between the companies, how this one will be treated maybe by the tax authorities. So a good jurisdiction is where you can manage all these things at 360 degrees. And I think that here today, having all the authorities, not had yet the pleasure to work with the Kazakhstan authorities, but I think that they are open to discuss and to adjust and to see how you need to navigate the regulation.
Well, second that. And I think from this discussion, I've come up with a mental schema of three categories of regulation, right? There's the crypto regulation, and that has two sides. Stable coins and everything else, and then let's use the name of the workshop. This is not the crypto systems workshop. It's the financial systems regulation, and you were mentioning Qatar. You mentioned in Qatar as well, tokenized securities and so on. Everything that's relating to financial systems is an area that is going to be probably the most promising and the least, in a way, the least contentious, because that's the financial systems on new rails, right? Actually, we spend so much time discussing Switzerland, but not the DLT Act, right? We stayed on the FINMA guidance. So FINMA guidance regulates like stable coins and utility tokens and so on. But the DLT Act is one of the key things of Switzerland, where it provides a regulatory framework to financial infrastructure. That's super interesting. And what we're seeing in other countries right now, for instance, the UK, we don't know if the UK is how friendly is it going to end up towards stablecoins, towards crypto assets. We do know that to financial infrastructure on new rails, they're going to be very friendly. So that's promising. On the other crypto assets, on the everything else category, there's not that much debate. The Swiss or the EU approach, it's all right. It's too contentious. So the main area of debate is on stablecoins. And on stablecoins, we go back to what you were asking before, equivalence, right? That's the big question. And specifically on Kazakhstan, what I was hearing in previous panels was about this dual regime for local and global stablecoins. I think that's probably, in the context of Kazakhstan, a good strategic decision, because it allows them to just not kill an entire global market with a view to preserving the sovereignty that they want in their local currency. So I think that's quite positive. I also see that it's very positive, the dialogue between regulators with and the proactive character. I would say that nothing lasts forever, so let's use that momentum, that dialogue now to build something more lasting at the moment. And yeah, as we were saying, the same recipe does not have the same results in different places. Being proactive, I think in the case of Kazakhstan, is also a good strategic decision. I would encourage more of that. I would not say being proactive is anything that the EU needs more of, right? Back in the day, there was a discussion of regulating NFTs during the MiCA discussion. Finally, it was not regulated. But by the time the discussion was over, NFTs were dead. And now there's a similar discussion on regulating DeFi. And it's, from a theoretical point of view, regulating DeFi is really, really interesting. But the EU does not have a big enough DeFi market to merit the rule-making process. No way to enforce it, yes. So, different contexts. But in the case of Kazakhstan being proactive in the way that we're seeing here, with a different goal, really, which is not like slow down stable coins, it is become a regional hub. I think it's a good strategic decision.
I also heard about metaverse today. Like, I thought it was dead, but it doesn't look like.
No, come on. I've been doing quite a lot on that directly with the European Commission. And that's actually interesting, because that's not looking at just crypto, but actually like the DLT as such. And that is, we will need a whole day on that. But that
Mariana,
part is
I know
amazing.
that you have comments on everything that has been said. Can I just add you sort of a question that would guide you a bit? Because you have been involved in different communication. So not only what can be given as a lesson to take from a framework, but from a communication with regulators. Something that, what is the ideal dialogue that should take place? Something that you can share.
I think that is a big, it depends, but I'm a lawyer, so that's the one that always pops to
Everything
mind. Because
depends.
like the Italians, I love to talk to the Italians. They're so friendly with me. Have like different relationships with some other
Well, they are friendly,
jurisdictions
but
in the north.
the framework is suicidal, as Alberto said.
But yeah, I guess that it really depends of the approach. I come from a completely different background, so I didn't build a relationship with the regulations, nor in Qatar, nor in Germany, nor in Colombia and Brazil. From a point of view of financial assets, I'm always talking about the technology and how the technology can move on industries. That's what I was doing at the beginning, like working for an L1 with the European Commission to just like see how we can use blockchain and crypto for the smart cities in the Nordics, or smart mobilities in Germany. So you of course have like the crypto component at some point, but it's different. So they're more welcome to open to you when it's not financial markets. Once you start talking all the financial markets topics, the regulator gets a little bit more close. So you need to know how to approach them. But I don't think that there is a magic recipe. One thing that I want to say that is my take from today, there's one thing that I really like that I heard today, and I definitely need to do my homework on that, was the use of CDVCs for finance of like public infrastructure projects, because that's transparency, that is accountability, and that's amazing to fight corruption. So I would like to learn more about that like particular project, because I think that there's many governments that could benefit from that example. Also, like maybe we finish public infrastructure on time, particularly in Germany. So I would like to see how is that being deployed. But one thing that I want to say, I always pay for being too honest, but when something sounds too good, it is hard to believe. And I heard today way too many good things. So that means that like I'm missing parts. So I want to see what are like the complexities at the level of the implementation and the regulation here. Although I must say that the regulator really surprised me, is really proactive. But what I like it is that it's a pragmatic regulation. Regulator. So it's not looking so much at what are like the nitty-gritty details that I need to solve. It's like how I'm gonna do it and how we do it fast. Because if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it. And that I found really interesting as an industry person, because that means I can go there, I can talk to them, I can come with ideas, and they're gonna help me to implement. And then we apologize if we break something. But at least I'm gonna be able to do things, because what I have seen, and I forgot the NFT situation, but you're absolutely right. We killed them only with the idea that we were going to regulate them, and this is what is happening, right? Like there's not so much innovation going on right now in Europe because we are so scared to do not be compliant and get a fine that we prefer not to move. And only those that are able to pay for really big compliance teams and lawyers are the ones that are able to enter the market right now, because they have like more security in what they're going to do, right? So we created fear in the mind of the entrepreneurs, which is also kind of like a poison for the industry, I would say.
Thank you very much. All very, very, very straight to the point. Pragmatism and also education. You mentioned it before in the previous panel. We have like minus 20 minutes. So let me try to wrap up with a question that was supposed to be a whole section of the discussion. The famous harmonization concept. Loved the word that entered the space. Just briefly, do you think what should happen to get international harmonization achieved? Is it even possible? So sort of like a wish for the industry and a thought on which we all can end this panel. Thank you.
Maybe Kristina, can I take this one? I think it's a political question, this one. You know, it's political issues to have a framework worldwide. The framework is we have the passporting in the European Union, but then you need to do an assessment on each other jurisdiction where you want to offer your services, and this is the complexity from a crypto perspective. What I believe is that we should take as an example the AML framework, where we have an international body behind, the Financial Action Task Force, so an international organization that we will create a sort of common standard between jurisdictions, and we'll see if something like that will be made, because even just from a taxonomy perspective, an asset reference token in Europe is different from an asset token in Switzerland. It's completely different.
Even risk,
so
a concept of risk.
Be a security, not a security.
Define securities like it's the same.
Exactly. What's transferable securities in Europe? What's a financial product or financial instruments? And this is just between, let's say, the same jurisdiction, because the European Union we have the same prospects of regulation.
Okay, Ahmet, do you have?
I think it's differently. I believe there will be a harmonization, but it will be kind of a decentralized harmonization. Where today, for example, the regulators were talking they are in touch with Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and so on. Why? Because they are similar and they have similar concerns. So they will be coordinating more, I believe, and the kind of a global south, you can name it. Or because really, at the end of the day, this is more about the technology. It's not about the regulation. The business as usual is not there anymore. So everything is in making. So there will be much more coalitions among the different countries, and they will be actually harmonizing in doing trade and so on, in doing their financial transactions, but the harmonization will not be a global one. We will not have a kind of a BIS setting all the rules and so on. Even for BIS, they have many innovation hubs. Is it a coincidence? No, they have lots of projects because they know that the market is in making, technology is evolving, but at the same time, most likely there will be different centers. That's why I said decentralized kind of centers. It's not going to be each and every country will be unique, but there will be coalition of countries. And Qatar will be there, UAE will be there, and most likely Kazakhstan will be there. So there are similar type of countries are going to be more collaborating, and there will be harmonization among them. And then there will be cross-border. Same thing for the CBDC projects, right? There are a group of countries, and they're having these innovation hub centers, and they have their CBDC projects. And at some point, their CBDC projects will talk with other CBDC projects. This is what I am projecting. So, and this is quite normal because I believe the world has changed, and we don't have any more kind of a one single center.
Well, it is changing, as you said, always. Perpetuum mobile. Thank you so much. Juan?
I would agree with both that it's a political decision, and I like and agree with the concept of a bit more of a bottom-up harmonization. I'm not entirely sure we want a FATF for crypto, as much as the theory would be positive. I will add one thing, which is an operational requirement for that to happen. You have multiple types of harmonization. The most common one and pervasive, and the one that's even happening now, is informal, right? Oh, like when you're applying for a license, you're going to be asked, do you have a license somewhere else? Like who else has given you a license? Do you have a license in Switzerland? Those are things that informally matter and can make your life easier. But if you want to go steps beyond that, you need either equivalence regimes or fast-tracking regimes in the form of a partial equivalence. To get that, you need a local hook in regulation. Otherwise, even if you want to, you cannot execute that. So in the EU, there are equivalence regimes. We had Brexit, but we still accept British clearinghouses, right? Now, why is that? Because there are provisions in the regulation allowing for that political decision to be made. MiCA does not have that, right? It's in the latest MiCA 2.0 consultation what we think about that. So it can change. So my suggestion, very operational, very practical. If we want harmonization, we need to put the legal infrastructure there in the regulation to use it in the future whenever we want to.
So in theory, I will agree, but in principle, I highly disagree with harmonization. Because harmonization, how it works in practice, is an imposition or some regimes over others without the consideration of the context on those particular regimes. So I do not like harmonization, mostly in any context. I do agree that we need some standards, but and this will be my call to action, which I think I'm repeating what I said like previously. It's just like, what is the purpose of doing certain things, right? Because like reporting for the sake of reporting is expensive and is useless. And I think that like for countries that are gold-plating the FFTF and some other IOSCO recommendations, that's what's happening. I don't see what is the actual impact. I don't see less evil people getting caught for money laundering connected to child pornography, terrorism, of all of these things. What I see is just exchanges, reporting, and spending a lot of money on that. So I don't see impact. So what I would like to see is like if we're going to go in that direction where we need to also understand that this technology and these digital assets go beyond borders that do not respect any frontier, they will just, like, the genie is out of the box, there's no way to put it in, right? But let's make regulation that makes sense, that it actually protects the users. It actually has like transparency. It just like brings less corruption. It just like brings secondary markets and more liquidity into certain markets. It brings people that has been outside of the financial market into the banking infrastructure, right? Like that makes sense. But just the sake for reporting, just to just like check boxes and say like, yeah, I'm compliant, like that's the most horrible landscape I can imagine for harmonization. Like, and I will leave it there.
No.
But I think what we mean in this case is if you get a Swiss license, you should be able to have a fast-tracked access to the EU, right? Nothing too evil.
No, I also didn't went into that direction, but
No,
just
but
like
I will just close with one point. I discussed this one with the head of equities of SIX, that is the Swiss Stock Exchange for traditional instruments, and that's a very open topic with Brussels and the European legislator and authority. So Switzerland, it's a very specific example, you know. So there are many political discussions there. Okay, so the European Union says you want passporting, enter the European Union. And Switzerland say, no, we will not. I mean, the Swiss people, they don't want to enter the European Union. So it's political
but that's the recognition that we were discussing. And I presented the Genius Acts as one of them, because that's exactly what they have, right? Like that's also like the direction that you are going. My point on top of that is that if we are just like harmonizing regimes that are not being really effective just because of the fact that they are traditional and we like them, that's a big mistake. It's just like preserving what you say, the old from the new one, is just preserving legacy systems that in practice are not really working, but we like them.
It won't happen.
Well, we can't. We
It
cannot
won't
stop
happen
trying.
at least soon. At least
No,
soon.
not soon, but change never comes soon. If
Dear
change comes soon, it's
panelists,
bad.
thank you so much for demonstrating that regulation is such a fascinating topic, even at 5 p.m. after a whole day of panels. So a great round of applause for the panelists. Thank you so much. And I'm honored to invite here for the closing remarks, Java Su, Executive Director of the UK Centre for Blockchain Technologies and Associate Professor at the UCL, University College London.
And thank you, Kristina, for the final guiding question, because that is really related to my opening experience that I'm going to share with you guys. So this is my first time in Kazakhstan, a lovely, beautiful country, but I did encounter a little bit of hiccups when I landed. So first of all, I couldn't figure out how to use the machine in the airport to book a taxi. And then I thought, okay, fine, at least I downloaded, what's it called, Yandex. And then it came to the second problem. I don't have internet, right? I have a SIM card from the UK, and I just didn't buy roaming. That's on me. But fortunately, the taxi drivers outside of the airport, they were very kind. They wanted to help me out. But then it came the third problem, which is that they don't take Apple Pay. And of course, I only have Apple Pay, me being presumptuous again. And then we had to wait for the only colleague who's got an Apple Pay machine to swing back to take the payment. So that just prompted me into thinking, right? I am not a legal expert, although I work in digital currencies, digital assets, but I totally relate to what we just discussed about harmonization and borderless payment and so on and so forth. So it would be so nice for us to have seamless borderless payments, small payments that would not rely on internet connections. And the Kazakhstan driver was very enthusiastic and friendly, and was saying that the railway outside of the airport was built by the Chinese, and he was driving BYD, which was also a car manufactured in China. And so we have the commodities, almost becoming borderless and standardized. Whereas payments to date seem still to be quite, local and unstandardized, and unfortunately quite cumbersome. That was my experience, and now I need to read the script because I'm stepping in. So bear with me with that. So this is exactly where we're discussing to close this gap. We begin this morning with the National Bank and with the line from Paulo that set the tone. Kazakhstan isn't only talking about financial innovation, it is building it. We heard how the digital tenge is already being put out to work at wholesale, channeling public money transparently, earmarked and programmable, 2 major infrastructure projects, a railway and a major pipeline, financed and settled in central bank digital currency. There was a bigger argument inside that. A central bank today has to build the infrastructure, not only write the rules. Because if you wait for the market to build it, you risk closed ecosystems by the largest players, of course. And Paulo, who started this workshop back in 2015 at the Bundesbank in Deutschland, Germany, and has carried it across the world's central banks since, called the Digital Tenge, one of the most advanced CBDC initiatives anywhere. And this is the first time in more than a decade it has come to Central Asia. Underneath all of it, he put one word, and the governor had reached for it as well: trust. That is the real subject of this workshop: how public institutions and private innovation meet without giving up stability, privacy, or integrity. And this afternoon got more specific. We worked through fraud and financial crime, contract design in fintech, lending, Kazakhstan's own digital asset framework, and the wider international regulatory picture. So what I can really personally relate is to Professor Hu's remarks on personalized fintech advisors. So as a self-appointed fintech expert, I naturally also have my own bot trader, beautifully personalized, fully briefed on every paper I've ever written on algorithmic trading. So I asked it to build me a strategy to maximize my own portfolio's P&L, and I gently hinted that it might perhaps consult my publications. So after several minutes of combobulating and flipper-flappering, you know, if you're using Claude, what I'm talking about, it concluded firmly that it would adopt precisely none of my published backtest strategies. And I have nothing further to say. So, and yes, the script was written by AI, or a large part of it. If you like it, that's my AI proficiency to acclaim. And if you don't like it, that's my AI robot to blame. So, what a time to be alive when human beings can take all the glory and AI can take all the responsibility. Thank you very much.